When people watch The Punisher, they usually focus on the violence, the gunfights, the brutality, and the way that Frank Castle absorbs punishment and keeps moving forward. However, what gets overlooked is a quiet part of that equation, how his body is even capable of surviving it in the first place. The Punisher isn't just trained to fight, he's conditioned to endure what most human bodies are never meant to experience. Not for days, not for weeks, but repeatedly for years, until he feels the war is over. And once you understand how his strength and conditioning actually works, it becomes clear why these methods would break a normal man. Frank Castle's conditioning is built around one core idea: the body must not fail when violence becomes unavoidable. Before strength, before endurance, and before tactics, there is structure. If the body collapses under impact, nothing else matters. This mindset doesn't come from modern fitness culture or athletic performance. It actually comes from older combat systems where failure meant injury or death. That philosophy begins with Shorin-ryu karate, an Okinawan system shaped in an era where civilians trained under constant threat, limited resources, and widespread weapon use. These practitioners weren't preparing for matches or demonstrations. They were preparing for encounters where medical care was minimal and survival depended on how well the body could endure punishment. That's where a concept called Karada Kitae and Hojo Undo becomes essential. Karada Kitae literally translates to body conditioning in Japanese, but in traditional martial arts, it means something much more specific and severe than modern conditioning or fitness. Karada Kitae is a traditional impact conditioning method used primarily in Okinawan karate systems such as Shorin-ryu, Goju-ryu, and Ichi-ryu, and it also appears in classical jiu-jitsu training. The goal is to harden the body so it can absorb strikes, throws, and collisions without structural failure. Lastly, this method conditions the nervous system's response to impact. The Punisher explains the significance of this training method by sharing with us a near-death experience of being spiked by a 250-pound man, which took the wind out of him. That lesson made him incorporate Karada Kitae and Hojo Undo with the 250-pound heavy bag that he named Fat Boy. These methods will make sure that he is never compromised again. Now, to explain the next element, Hojo Undo, further, this is a type of conditioning that rebuilds the limbs through stress. This kind of conditioning places repeated stress on the body in controlled but relentless ways. His conditioning isn't designed to avoid pain, it's designed to function through it. A clear expression of this philosophy is Makiwara training. The Makiwara is not only a test of toughness, it's a tool for correction. Its flexible resistance punishes poor alignment instantly. If the wrist bends, the elbow flares, or the shoulder collapses, pain becomes immediate feedback. There's no buffer, no padding, and no forgiveness. Over time, the skeletal chain adapts, knuckles thicken, wrists stabilize, and ultimately the nervous system stops panicking on contact. This is why the Punisher can strike solid targets without hesitation. His body already understands what impact feels like. For a normal person, this phase alone would be enough to cause joint damage, nerve irritation, and mental burnout long before adaptation ever occurs. One must understand and remind themselves, like the Punisher does, that through this conditioning, one could be forged into something razored and hard, something beyond bruising, beyond pain. Now, the same conditioning logic continues into another philosophy known as Kote Kitae, the conditioning of the forearms. Historically, Kote Kitae taught practitioners how to receive force correctly. When forearms collide, the goal is about reinforcement. For someone like the Punisher, who relies on limb control, weapon deflections, and close ring clashes, this conditioning is critical. This will ensure his arms don't fail when force meets force. Through the help of microchip, The Punisher is able to train until his heart is content, with gizmos that simulate attackers and situations that he will be put in during this war on crime. Now that we have covered the upper body conditioning, we will focus on something known as Ashikubi Kitae, which addresses the lower body, the shins, ankles, and feet. Traditional fighters didn't operate on flat, padded surfaces. They fought on uneven ground where losing balance meant losing the fight. Conditioning the lower legs ensured stability under disruption. This is why the Punisher remains upright even when shoved, kicked, or injured. His base isn't fragile, so it's conditioned to hold under pressure. Most people never expose their lower body to this kind of repetitive stress. Ankles, knees, and feet fail early, not because of weakness, but because they were never prepared for sustained abuse. To strengthen his lower body, he uses what he calls the post, which is one of his favorites. The post is made out of slatted bamboo and foam padding that barely gives. Since he has been using the post for quite some time, he is now able to break the handle of a Louisville slugger without bruising his shins. Now, even though the Punisher's base isn't fragile, sometimes mistakes happen and/or an enemy can get the best of him. This goes into another aspect that's equally important, and that is Ukemi, which ties into the Punisher's jiu-jitsu background. Ukemi is often misunderstood as simply learning how to fall safely. Historically, it was about survival under momentum. Practitioners train to disperse force through the body instead of letting it concentrate in the spine, neck, or joints. This conditioning teaches the nervous system not to panic when gravity takes over. For a normal person, this phase is where fear takes over. The nervous system locks up and the body braces incorrectly, and injuries happen fast. When the Punisher is thrown, slammed, or knocked off his feet, his body reacts automatically, rolling, absorbing, and recovering without hesitation. The fall doesn't end the fight because he's been trained for it. This is why the Punisher and Microchip created what is known as Junk Alley. The Junk Alley is comprised of random crud that was found around the area. The Punisher repurposed this crud and random objects as a training method to prepare his body for unplanned and/or less than desirable positions. This is why he purposely throws himself or dives down steps to practice how to use anything to break his fall. For anyone that is brave enough to do this or has to do this, the Punisher suggests to position your body to land on muscle instead of bone. Otherwise, you'll be in a world of hurt. Taken together, these methods create something modern training often overlooks: a body that doesn't betray the fighter when things go wrong. Frank Castle doesn't rely on durability alone. He relies on conditioning systems designed centuries ago to make the human body endure violence without falling apart. This is why pain doesn't stop him, why impact doesn't panic him, and why being knocked down is never the end. Before strength, before weapons, and before strategy, the Punisher built a body that could survive the fight. Only after that foundation is built does Frank move into heavy strength work, and this is where the Marine Corps mindset takes over. In the Marines, strength is never trained just to look strong. It's trained to function under stress, to keep moving when tired, injured, or outnumbered. Marines don't separate workouts from combat. Every movement supports fighting, carrying gear, controlling people, or surviving chaos. The Punisher, being a Marine, obviously trains the same way. When he lifts heavy weight, does pull-ups, push-ups, or grinds through body weight work, he's reinforcing the same principles Marines are taught early on. Your body must keep working even when your mind wants to stop. One of the Punisher's favorite ways of building strength is through powerlifting. Powerlifting movements build full body coordination, not isolated muscle. Strength comes from the entire body working together. That's how Frank can overpower criminals, throw people around, pin them, or drag bodies without slowing down. The Punisher says that he will always hit the weights, and no other exercise on earth gives you the strength and mass of powerlifting. He even reinforces his statement by telling readers this: if any fancy dancing pencil neck geek who tells you that size and strength doesn't count, they're full of it. He then finalized it even more by saying the oldest rule in fighting still holds: if other things are equal, bet on the big guy. Pulling movements are also important. Marines rely heavily on pulling strength, climbing, grappling, controlling opponents, and maintaining grip under stress. Frank's grip doesn't fail easily. Grip failure ends fights fast, and he's trained beyond that point. Push-ups and pressing movements build endurance, but more importantly, they build discipline. Marines learn early that push-ups aren't just exercise. They're a test of how you respond when your body is burning and you're told to keep going anyway. As we see here, the Punisher constantly tests and pushes himself beyond limits one could only dream of. The Punisher is known to do 1,000 sit-ups in the morning and 1,000 push-ups in the evening. The main thing that keeps him going is his hardened mindset. This is why the Punisher doesn't stop when it hurts. That's the difference between the Punisher and the normal man. In conclusion, the Punisher's training wouldn't break someone because it's extreme. It would break them because it's relentless, cumulative, and uncompromising. These conditioning methods attack the body at every level all at once, over long periods of time, and without comfort or recovery the way modern training allows. A normal person wouldn't fail because they're weak. They'd fail because their body was never meant to be conditioned this way. The Punisher survives because his life has demanded it. Pain didn't make him quit. Fatigue didn't make him stop. And fear didn't make him hesitate. The war against crime must be won at all costs. Now, just like the martial arts videos, I have to give a disclaimer. The conditioning methods you just saw can be dangerous for the normal man. Some of them are rooted in real martial arts systems as well as the Marine Corps, which is developed for survival and self-defense. This breakdown is for education and entertainment purposes only, to show the science, the strategy, and the brutal efficiency behind the Punisher's tactics. Do not attempt these methods at home, in training without professional supervision, or outside of a serious, structured martial arts or gym setting. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to punch the like button, share the video, and your thoughts in the comment section, and let me know if you would like to see more breakdowns of the Punisher. Lastly, if you haven't already, please subscribe. The Punisher Mythos is out.